What's up, Weed Gang? Your boy Dan Sutton here with a great friend of mine, a super special guest, uh, a fellow who's been in the game since the early 90s, a gregarious, fun individual to be around, and one fine example of someone who is able to make the transition from legacy, very guarded operations into the current Canadian legal market, which is its own set of minefields stacked on minefields. But Kyp Rowe, really glad to have him here today. And Kyp, I want to start with how you came to know the cannabis plant. Let's go from the beginning.
All right. Wow. It's yeah, that's a long time ago. That would have been probably 1985. London, Ontario is where I grew up, and Crystal Ball Amusements was the arcade store where you went and got your dope. The thing is, back then is that we couldn't find cannabis back in my town. It was hash and hash oil, which a lot of the folks today would be like RSO oil. It wasn't refined CO2 oil. It was chunky and it was greasy and it was black. One for $15 or two for 25. That was the deal. And you had to go talk to the guy behind the Dwarf machine and he'd get you set up, right? And all the hash back then was all the Afridi, the Afghani stuff coming in down the St. Lawrence that was all controlled by the Quebec mob, the Italians and the HA, and it would all filter down through Southwestern Ontario, the corridor through down to Detroit. So hash and hash oil was kind of my first experience in cannabis. I'm a redhead. I've got a lot of hyperness to me in general, and I had a lot of trouble sleeping, chronic insomnia from a very early age. And I found that, a couple hits of this before bed and I was out like a light. So it was really early on was medicine. Also supplemented my allowance from my family.
Of course, man. And the cannabis culture across Canada is always diverse, but Ontario does enjoy its hash. I'm sure your grades of hash enhanced with quality over time. That's super cool to hear, man. And thanks so much for joining us today, a true OG. So let's fast forward a little bit to your first entrees into the cannabis business or cannabis cultivation and seed generation. How did you fall in love with breeding?
Well, breeding kind of came to me through friends in the industry. I mean, everyone was growing dope back in the early 90s, any kind of rental home they could find in Vancouver. I mean, you couldn't throw a rock without hitting a grow house. At 6 o'clock at night, you saw the lights dim on the street a little bit and then go back up. My favorite is when the snow fell and you could see all the snow on the roofs that weren't there from all the growth. Anyways, so we were growing for Sensi, for flower. A lot of it was feeding the American market, to be quite honest. A lot of the stuff was going down south. And a friend of mine at the time, he'd done some breeding himself, and he kind of, got it. He said to me, listen, we could start a seed company. That's really, we dove from Sensi right to the seed company. And at the time, there was maybe 3 or 4 seed companies online. I mean, we're talking about HTML chat rooms back in the day, right? This was way before any of this stuff happened. And there was, Mark Emery. He was the first one to really kind of to do it big. Whether you love him or hate him, that's up to everyone's own choice. But the man blazed some trails, and that was one of them. That, and then of course you had all the Dutch guys, but they would never sell to North America. So it was pretty much Mark selling in North America, and we decided that we were going to be the second ones doing it. So we opened up Legend Seed Company, and that was 1999. And we went over and stocked up on a bunch of Dutch stuff. And so we got to meet all those guys, like the Dronkers families from Sensi and Hank from Dutch Passion, the Serious Seed guys, all those cats. Casey Brains, one of the craziest motherfuckers you'll ever meet in your life.
You guys can all try to Google these people, but you're probably just going to have to ask Kyp in the chat room.
Okay, my apologies. I got to remember the audience I'm talking to. These are all the original Dutch coffee shop and seed breeders from back in the late 80s, early 90s that are some of the reasons why we're all here today, to be quite frank. So do your homework. So what we would do is we go over there, we buy the seeds to send them back to Vancouver. We had a website, and actually, a sidebar, my very first ad for Legend Seeds was in Vice magazine. So there you go. I took a half-page ad out in 1999. They charged me $1,500, but I don't even know if I paid it, to be honest with you. I think it kind of got lost in the mix.
Well,
Um,
I'm sure those guys have stiffed a few checks in their day. That's pretty cool. I mean, like Vice Magazine is dating both of us. I'm in my mid 30s, and that was very cool when I was a young kid.
yeah.
It's a different animal now. I don't know. It's owned by Fox or something. Anyway, pretty
I
sick that
think
you got some
you could be
coverage.
right, brother. You could be right. So but my biggest thing with the website was showcasing Canadians. That was huge to me, as it still is today, to be quite frank. There was no American scene that was commercialized at any level. I mean, it was still lockdown down south. You know, we had the pot block in Vancouver on West Hastings with Blunt Brothers and the Amsterdam Cafe, and Cannabis Culture, Hemp Nation, or whatever at the time. So we had a scene, a safe place that we could kind of go and do business with each other and talk to each other. So, I was really concerned with getting Canadian guys on board. Companies like West Coast Seeds, East Island, Jordan of the Island. These were the companies that we dealt with and we wanted to showcase, and we sold worldwide on the net, which was extremely risky at the time. So it was fun, but it definitely had its challenges.
Well, let's talk about that for a moment, because we live in an environment now where, for all the challenges in our industry, there's no one looking over our shoulder. And that's, I stand on the shoulders of giants to be able to do my job without the fear of persecution. And I'm proud to do it. And so I think it's good context for our viewers here and the patrons of Weed Gang to understand sort of where we came from. When you were doing that kind of work, what kind of pressure did you feel from law enforcement, and how did you have to modify your life to be able to continue to exist in that gray area?
It was huge. I mean, the constant threat was every day. I mean, think about it this way. I mean, we were taking ads out in High Times, in the back of High Times, a full page ad, like 1-800-GOT-SEEDS. So we weren't hiding anything we were doing, but what it was a telephone number and a PO box that was right down in West Georgia, where the old post office was, downtown in Van. And so PO Box 3114, I still remember it. And every time I went to that damn box, I literally thought that would be the last day I was going to that box, because they were sending money orders. And, we knew what we were doing. It was an act of civil disobedience because we thought it was ridiculous. And we wanted to spread the seed as far and wide as we could. I would have panic attacks the first couple months, sitting in my car, just like, okay, you can do this. You can do this. Just go in, get the damn money orders, and walk out. So that was really stressful. The fact, you can kind of stretch this out a little bit. I also owned a head shop called High End in Kitsilano for years, with my good buddy Steve Crichton. And we actively had a sign in the front window at 4th and Burrard, right beside West Beach, and the very first Lululemon store and all of that, saying seeds sold here, like, come get them. And I remember there was a Pizza Hut right across the street from us, and there were 2 undercover cops that sat there for almost 6 weeks. Imagine sitting there for 40 hours a week, watching a bunch of stoners smoke joints outside and sell seeds to every other stoner around. And organic clothing, and we had some ridiculous glass in there too. We were a little bit ahead of our time. Didn't make a lot of money other than the seeds. And just taking pictures of us. There were times I would get followed home all the time by these cats. I remember sitting playing Tiger Woods golf with my roommate Steve Crichton at 4 a.m. once. We just kind of blazing down, and I got a knock on the door, and it was 2 undercover guys saying that a taxi driver had gotten jacked, and they were just canvassing the area, and if we'd see anything. And I remember my full name is William Kipling Rowe, so that's what it says on my ID. And they asked for ID in my own home, gave it to them. They're like, okay, well, thanks so much. We'll see you around Kip. How would they know my name is Kip when my name says it's William Kipling Rowe? I mean, the harassment was thick. I can't tell you how many cell phones are at the bottom of the Burrard Street Bridge. Nokias, those great brick Nokia phones. So yeah, it was ever present. We were always getting harassed, always getting hassled, and flying in and out of Canada to Amsterdam to get the seeds and things like that. I knew every time I arrived back in Vancouver, it was going to be 2 hours, the butt cheek spread, the 20,000 questions, the glove, the whole bit. So yeah, those were the days.
Well, that kind of civil disobedience paved the way for our model of Canadian legalization. Thank you very much, and thank all of those that came along to help showcase that this isn't really such a big deal. You can make yourself a lot less of a hassle of a government by legalizing cannabis. We're both Canadian. I'm actually so glad that you're a redhead that's full of energy. You're like a type 1 Canadian stereotype for our international audience. I'm also Canadian, British Columbian, and it sounds like we shared a lot of time in my hometown, Vancouver, which is also maybe the New York City of cannabis in Canada. You can make it here, you can make it anywhere. But we have a model in Canada that has demonstrated maybe a little too effectively that you can legalize cannabis, you can substantially reduce your policing costs, you can substantially reduce the social burden of putting nonviolent criminals and offenders into prison over drugs and over weed. And everyone, there's no panic in the streets. Spoiler alert, the Canadian population is as mellow, if not more mellow, than they've ever been. And so thanks to Kyp's great work on that kind of stuff, not to mention the genetics, which we're coming to. On that note, let's talk about Johnny Blaze. What's the story behind the strain you're bringing us? And we want to know all the gory details.
All right. So I didn't do a lot of breeding back in the day, everybody. I'm going to be very transparent. I supported a pile of breeders. That was kind of my thing back in the day. I did get a chance for a little while to come out with some very exciting cultivars that meant a lot to me personally. We got to meet DJ Short, Dan, the original breeder of the true blueberry. To me, I mean, I was stuttering over my words when I first met him. I mean, to me, this guy's a god. Very reclusive gentleman, one of the kindest, most gentle men you'll ever meet in your entire life. A full-blown mentor to me and to most of my crew, and not only about just cannabis, but life in general. He just had a very sage way of getting through life. Then I learned a lot from him. We had the opportunity through Dan to do his first seed line in like 15 years or 12 years at the time. And it was all his original genetics from Oregon that he had gathered up to create the original blueberry and flow lines. So I had a number of grow houses in Vancouver at the time. Sidebar, always grow west of Granville. You never got busted because my lawyer, John Conroy, told me they don't bust rich white people.
For those of you who don't know Vancouver, Granville's definitely the divider from there. That's bougie. Now it's like Boundaries, the divider, because it's bougie because we've all gentrified. Okay, grow your weed west of Granville. That's definitely more true today than it's ever been.
I think so, right? I mean, back then, we would get a mansion. We actually lived beside Trevor Linden's brother, right beside us. He never knew a damn thing we were doing. And we had a 12 lighter in a basement, and it was big enough. At the time, 12 lights for us, 12 1,000 waters in a very small room. That was a big deal. I mean, you could get in a lot of trouble for that shit. So we did the selections for Dan. Dan ended up moving up with his then wife, Carla, into Vancouver as well, which was amazing. But we did the selections on the male, which became it was B133. I think there was over 600 seeds we cracked, and we did selections on. And back then, this is before labs, everyone. I mean, this was a visceral scratch and sniff test. This was a morphological look in. And I mean, we were in a basement, with old HPS lights and, trying to hide smells and electricity and our landlords and the neighborhood, the whole bit, But we did it and we got through it, and we found out a B133 male was this great, amazing, early pollinating male. At the time, we thought this was obviously a good thing because we were, as growers, you were always trying to shorten the flowering time down, obviously to grind out more grows during your year. We also found that this male was extremely resinous, and that was a complete unicorn. We'd never seen anything like it. The male flowers kind of look like closed tulips, right? And they had the purple striations on them, and they had little resin heads on it. And a lot of Dan's genetics, especially the males, had like a burnt rubber smell to them. And it was really, really off-putting almost. And I remember him saying to me one day, he's like, "You're going to find a lot of tires, but find the one that doesn't smell like a tire. And that's the one we're going with." And he was,
oh my God, that is amazing.
and he wasn't wrong. And we did. So we hit that, and then we found a bunch of mothers that became True Blueberry, F13, which was down the flow line, was more of an equatorial leaning cultivar, Blue Moonshine, and the Grape Crush, another personal favorite. I mean, the Grape Crush literally smelled like Grape Crush the pop. I mean, 30 feet away, you just wanted to, you wanted to go drink it. And so what I did as well at the time with his blessing was take a bunch of cultivars, cuts, like clones that were really popular at the time. The Renee, we had the Renee in there. The Sweet Skunk we had in there. What else do we have? I had the original Texana Time Warp cut in there as well. And we dusted it all with the B133 male. We're pollen chuckers. I don't know if I call myself a breeder. I'm not going to at all. I was a pollen chucker. Let's be very clear about that. Okay?
Our NFT audience is going to be highly incentivized to chuck a lot of pollen. So respect to you.
Hey, the more pollen you chuck, the more diverse the population, and that's key. I mean, I know breeders are amazing because they stabilize lines and they stabilize traits, and they go in and they do inlining and things like that. I never had the time or space, to be quite frank, to do that kind of stuff. We were pollen chuckers and dice throwers back then. But one of the ones that we also did during that time was a Neville's Haze. Oh man, this beauty. Those who do know me know that I have an affinity for equatorials, specifically haze. To me, Kush is Kush, yeah. But to me, the real, gods of the earth are the equatorials, like haze, and especially Neville Schumacher's haze. He was the only reason. He's one of the major giants, and the only reason some of us are still here, to be quite frank, was some of the stepping stones that he started that we just followed through on. I got the Neville's Haze from Arjen, is a gentleman who owns Greenhouse Seeds in Amsterdam. He is a character unto himself. He owns it. Like at that time, I think there were 4 greenhouse coffee shops in Amsterdam. He had the Greenhouse Seed Company. They were winning High Times Cannabis Cups left over right all the time. And this guy is, he's just amazing. He's just so hyper. He is cannabis and everything cannabis. Again, another mentor of mine. And I remember him taking me aside at the Cannabis Cup when it was at the PAX Party House still in Amsterdam. This was back around, 1999, I think, 2000. And we were getting in all sorts of trouble back then together. And I asked him, I said, I really want some Neville's Haze seeds, but I want the collection. I don't want to get what you guys sell, because they were doing like F2s and F3s. I said, you've got to have original parent stock. Anyways, long story short, in the bathroom at the PAX Party House, like a drug deal, he gave me a vial of 20. So we did a selection. I took him back to Vancouver. We did a selection. We found the mother we wanted. It was popcorn and bracket upon bracket, no structure. I mean, there's no commercial viability of these things whatsoever. But my God, does she just made your mouth drop. Like the first time you ever saw Marilyn Monroe back in the day, or some like this beautiful, stunning woman that you can't have words to describe. It was like that. We let her go for 15 weeks when we did the selection for the pheno for the mother. When the seeds that I think we let go almost 17 weeks to make sure all the seeds went, and they were like pinheads, the tiny little seeds. And we called it Johnny Blaze. I was really, really big into Wu-Tang back then and Method Man. And I just wanted to give him a massive shout out. And this stuff it's an equatorial lover's dream. It is racy. It is spicy, reeks of pinene, limonene. We did one lot. They're very, very scarce. They're extremely rare. I know of maybe 2 or 3 breeders that maybe have a few packs left that they've always been waiting to get into the right position to be able to crack them and look and see what they've got. And that's the first offering that I wanted to do for the Weed Gang, because that was closest to my heart. We've got a few others coming that were also close, but not like this one.
Well, the breeders can prepare for some rare terpenes and interesting building blocks. We'll leave it at that. We haven't disclosed as much as we're gonna. That is so cool, Kyp, and I get to know you a little bit better through this. I get to get a taste of your deeper history. Let's talk for a moment about your day job. In the NFT world, they call it shilling. We want to know all about shelter market. There's a lot of Canadians, and when you come to Canada, if you're not from Canada, then you should definitely check out the Shelter Market family of offerings, because they're delightful, really meticulously cared for cannabis, one of the most popular brands in the country, known for quality. And Kyp, you managed to take all of this wild experience and turn it into an actual serious cannabis corporate hustle. Let's why don't you tell the people what you guys do at Shelter?
Oh, thanks so much, Danny. So I want to give some massive shout outs to Mark and Matt Hauk. They were the founders of Shelter. They ran a black market sites, a traditional market site. That's the words I want to use. The traditional market site for years. And they really got it down pat. Their whole idea was that they wanted to get into the space. They ran a mom. As soon as we had the availability to actually get into the legal space, they acquired kind of a distressed asset in Agro Greens, which was a licensed production facility in Macklin, Saskatchewan. Think corner gas for all our Canadian friends out there. And that's pretty much what Macklin, Saskatchewan is, like a couple of gas stations and a lot of highway and farms. So we took that place over. We immediately shut down the grow inside and we stayed within our limits. We are processors, we are distributors. Our whole kind of crux of what we wanted to do was we wanted to start a medical marketplace nationally that focused in on getting the smaller micro, smaller standard, smaller processors into the supply chain. We saw the bottleneck coming a mile away. That's why I shut down our grow. We're not going to be a jack of all trades. We're going to be a master of one, and that was Shelter Market. I can say, with, all shaded hubris aside, we were the very first company to bring Canada's first micro to the recreational and to the medical markets. That was North 40 with Gordon Nickel. It was really important for us. We wanted to give them an avenue because we knew that corporate cannabis was not how we wanted the world to see our culture, our industry. To us, it was always going to be the small guys, the mom and pops, how we all were brought up in a 12 liter in Kerrisdale. And so, that's how it started. We eventually ended up carrying about 6 different micros at one point. Madness. The industry changes so much over the time. So we have the medical marketplace, which has now got a whole bunch of different offerings on it, which is fantastic. We've got a very diverse patient group and base. We also got into the recreational field as well with our Shelter Craft offerings, where we've kind of partnered up with a few smaller plays, micro plays, and are entering that into the recreational markets. That would be the Prairie Grass, the two sisters from Grassy Lake, Alberta. I don't make this shit up. And that would be Kootenay's Finest as well from Crawford Bay and the Kootenays. And we also distribute Organicraft. That's Josh Adalia's crew out of Vernon, BC, which is putting out absolute gas right now. I mean, selling out before we can even think about listing it. It's gone. So very fortunate to have found these family members, we like to call them, because we're a small company. I don't want to work with assholes, and I want to be able to support people that I want to support their vision that I believe in. And so there's that. I talk to micros and cultivators all day. I have the luckiest job in the world. I'm director of cannabis at Shelter. My job is literally to vet and find new flower to bring to both the medical and the recreational streams. 15-year-old me is high-fiving 50-year-old me, pretty heavy right now. But just, again, fortunate, humbled, and excited about the future and how we can create our own path moving forward and kind of get away from the pubco scene.
I'm with you. All of us on this channel, you got to buy your local. You got to support the little guys that are out here fighting for their lives, thanks to the hustle of people like Kyp. And when you buy Shelter, you can rest assured that it's been well curated for you. People who really care about cannabis probably care more than you might ever have put their vision behind giving you something that's going to blow your mind. And that is nowhere truer than Shelter.
Listen, it's true, because every flower that we do put up on Shelter has crossed my desk. I will be quite honest. I probably turn down 90% of the offerings that we get pitched. It's got to knock me out. It's got to be something that I can put my name on, my stamp on, something that I know our patients will find value in. And it's not always going to be something that I even like, to be quite frank. I know that everyone's flavor palette is completely different. So I have to have an open mind about this. And I always try to go through the samples 2 or 3 times over 5 days at different times in the day, even, I was in the wine industry for a while too. Same idea. When you're doing tastings, you've got to do them at different temperatures and outside and inside and different times of the day to get an overall idea of how your physiology and your chemistry reacts to the input that you're putting in. So to give a really honest and extremely good vetted analysis.
I have a feeling that we're going to have some other future podcasts about cannabis tastings that are going to be really informative, at least to me, and to a host of people that want to share in that insight. The crossover between wine and your world is super cool. We're definitely going to have to come back to that because it sounds like that's a multi-hour discussion that will require some wine to be consumed, which I'm all for. But look, you said something earlier, which is a core tenet of this community and this deal. My favorite people in cannabis exude humility. They've really had to work super hard and probably been humbled many times to leave the ego at home. And I'm seeing that around the NFT world in such a beautiful way. I'm seeing that around Web3, at least the quality people in Web3. There's assholes everywhere for sure. But you said you don't want to work with assholes. Well, in Weed Gang, it's no assholes allowed. So we'll all guard that shit. All of us watching this need to guard that culture with our loyalty. And Kyp, you're helping us all lay the foundations for it, man. So thank you so much for your time and thank you so much for your contribution.
Dan, I mean, thank you for making this all happen, brother. It's a mutual rub and tug here. Now we go. But the fact is that without the microphone and without the volume turned up, what you've done to support craft, to support this industry, and now to support this new great way to network and join communities together, none of this is possible. So everybody, this is the man. Support this man and his vision. And I can't listen, guys. This whole new thing is really, really weird to me. I was in HTML chat rooms 20 years ago. Now I'm trying to figure out what the hell Discord is. So be gentle with me and help a brother out. I'm old and in the way somewhat.
They'll teach you all about NFTs. You teach them all about cannabis. It's a done deal. That's the whole reason why we're doing this.
I love it.
All right, brother. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll talk again soon.
I look forward to it. Thanks.